Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. I wish to begin by wishing all Trinidadians and Tobagonians a happy 49th anniversary of our independence. Today, we are here to give information with respect to what transpired over the last 24 hours with respect to operations during our state of emergency. There were a number of arrests and a number of firearms were seized, as well as ammunition. And as is the norm, those areas will be emphasized and elaborated upon by the Commissioner of Police, as well as the Chief of Defense Staff. Additionally, what we refer to as the scrap iron operations continued today in the Claxton Bay and Penal area. That as well would be elaborated upon by the Chief of Defense Staff. I wish to, once again, as I usually do, identify our hotlines. The numbers are 800-0069 and 800-0070. And once more, I wish to thank all those who have been calling in, and we have been getting a number of calls with information. I want to thank those law-abiding patriots for their assistance. I want to, as well, invite parents, in particular, to bring out their sons and daughters. Come as families to view our Independence Parade tomorrow morning. Come to, and look at our heroes, our police officers, our defense force officers, our fire officers, our prison officers, and come and make a grand day of it. And let's exercise some element of patriotism. Remember, Trinidad and Tobago belongs to us. This is our home. This is our country. We must make it livable. We must make it enjoyable, not only for us, for our visitors, and most importantly, for our children. We are living for them, and to ensure that they would continue our legacies in ensuring that Trinidad and Tobago continues to rise as a country. And we intend to ensure, based on what we put into the efforts that we make, that this country will rise and become the peaceful and secure and safe country we knew it once was. Let's go into our 50th year of independence as a nation that we can continue to be justly proud of. I thank you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. As we continue on with the state of emergency this week, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has continued to use this as a great opportunity to bring back some safe preventative measures to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It follows along the line of our strategic plan to be suppressive in areas of crime reduction and to look at disruption of gangs, looking at eradication of drugs, and the arrest of those people who have got warrants outstanding for them. On the same token, it allows us opportunity to start to build towards the future. And we will be building our plans through our 21st century policing models and our capacity building, which will allow us to provide greater preventative structures in the fight against crime. Today, we had, in the past 24 hours, between 8 a.m. and on August 29th and 8 a.m. today, we had a total arrested of 74 individuals, 37 of them gang-related, 2 in relation to homicides, 15 individuals arrested in regards to drug offenses, 1 firearm-related offense, 6 serious offenses, and 13 outstanding warrants. We had 93 traffic occurrences, and we seized 6 firearms and upwards of 600 rounds of assorted ammunition. This brings our total number of arrested individuals to a total of 894. 335 are gang-related. And again, once again, we are using this opportunity of the state of emergency to bring back that peaceful, safe, healthy environment for individuals within Trinidad and Tobago. I want to make just one final comment, and that has to do with a comment I made a couple of days ago. And it was based on a question from the media and a response relative to how many gang leaders had been arrested. I explained that the officers were continuing their investigations and sorting through intelligence and evidence that would help them to categorize persons as to their hierarchical positions within these gangs. The statement wasn't intended to cause any offense, disrespect, or to demean any group within Trinidad and Tobago. It was simply stated to help clarify where we were with our investigations. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force over the last 24 hours continued to support the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in a range of operations throughout Trinidad and Tobago, pursuant to the 4 objectives that were articulated repeatedly over the last week or so. Over the last 24 hours, a number of search and seizure operations were conducted in the areas of operations. I just want to highlight one thing so that there's a clear understanding by the public. There are really 3 types of operations taking place during the state of emergency. The first one, of course, is the lead, and that's the law enforcement agency, police service, doing strictly police operations. The second type of operations that you will see taking place throughout the Republic are joint operations, what the military commonly refer to as interagency operations, because they are 2 different agencies. They are commonly referred to, of course, as joint operations by the public. And the third type of operations are the ones that are independent military operations. And all of these operations really are pursuant to the common 4 objectives that have been outlined during the state of emergency. So the one that I want to highlight this afternoon is the one that where the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, and particularly the Army, who is the main effort in the Defense Force's operations, the success that was achieved last night based on intelligence, where, as you see before you, a number of two weapons and a number of different types of ammunition were discovered hidden in central Trinidad. It was based on a tip to one of our serving members, and a section plus of military personnel were deployed to that location rapidly and were able to unearth, literally, what you see before you: 1 pump-action shotgun, 1.22 rifle, 5 7mm magazines, 1 9mm magazine, 1 telescope, 5 pistol holsters, and a range of different types of ammunition amounting to 381 rounds. So it was, in our supporting effort, a major success. And I will assure the public it is really a sign of things to come. Finally, as mentioned by the Honorable Minister of National Security, in terms of the scrap iron operation that is also taking place simultaneously, over the last 24 hours, 32,280 kilograms of scrap iron was carried away to the Point Lisas area and searched initially by SWOT. And I would just want to clarify as well that given the information available to us, the process for the operations in terms of the scrap iron removal is to carry it to a point to be searched prior to it being processed accordingly by ISPAT. So that's what I have to offer for the Defense Forces activities over the last 24 hours. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we are on the verge of going to Parliament on Friday, where we will debate, in accordance with the Constitution, the statement of His Excellency the President as Head of State, which has been tendered to the Speaker, as is required by the Constitution. We will also debate the question of the extension of the state of emergency and the curfew. It will be a matter, of course, for the Parliament to debate and decide upon in due course. One of the perhaps most important things to note about what has been taking place in Trinidad and Tobago is that the institutions of the state and the machinery set up in the architecture of our Constitution has been functioning the way it should. It bears repeating and reminding members of the public that it is the very Constitution that gave the fundamental human rights and freedoms to all citizens, that recognize that there may be times when a crisis or an emergency may present itself, such that you need to activate and trigger exceptional measures, and that is why we declare the state of emergency in accordance with the very Constitution itself, so that the very document that guarantees your fundamental rights and freedoms recognizes that there may be times when exceptional measures may be required, and that is why you have the avenue of a state of emergency being declared. When that state of emergency is declared, of course, there are constitutional safeguards that are provided to protect our parliamentary democracy, and those safeguards, and to protect, of course, the rights of all citizens. On the one hand, with respect to the rights of citizens, you have the tribunal established by the Chief Justice. You have detention orders and detainees. On the other hand, you have the courts. The constitutional right to be taken before an appropriate judicial authority promptly is not one that is suspended, and that is why you would have seen the courts have been meeting, and prisoners that have been processed and charged, they have in fact been dealing with their matters in court. So the system is operating the way it should. The last missing link to that constitutional puzzle was in fact the Parliament meeting, and we are meeting well within the constitutional prescribed limit, and we are meeting to debate a statement which was required within 3 days to be tendered, within 3 days by His Excellency, and that was also done. So that we have met all the constitutional prescriptions and requirements, and that is a matter consistent with the action taken, which is to uphold the rule of law, to engender respect for the rule of law, and to restore law and order. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now invite your questions.
News question to the police commissioner. He said there were 93 traffic offences. Could you give me an idea of what that meant exactly?
Through some of the road stops that we would have had, members would have issued tickets for a variety of violations, whether they're seatbelt violations, whether they're broken taillights, whatever it might be that they came across during their operations throughout the evening.
Another thing in terms of the math, if I look at what you're saying here, 894 total have been arrested. Of that, 335 for gang-related activity. The 335 do not amount to the majority who have been arrested. And of course, it does raise a question in my mind as to whether or not you are really capturing the target group, which the government has said are the members of these criminal gangs. And again, the other part of the question, the concern of people who may not have much of a criminal background not being detained with people who may have a criminal background, and what potential problem that could cause?
Well, make no mistake, when we take 335 people off the streets that are related to gang activities, those are criminals that have been involved in very serious offenses, anything from drug trafficking, homicides, serious assaults. These are people that are violent. They're people that intimidate, cause fear within our communities. And it's very significant when you look at 335 people.
Well, again, the majority are not gang members. So is that something that is being looked at? In other words, you may have persons who may have outstanding warrants, people who may have been involved in homicides and so on. But again, the government's statement has been specifically going after the gang-related, the gang members. So is this a lanyard? Is this something that is being catered for in terms of, again, the point I was trying to make earlier, the concern about people who may not be seasoned criminals mixing and blending in a prison system with people who are seasoned criminals, and any potential problem that could cause?
Well, you've asked a couple of questions there. First of all, even if they aren't related to a gang, certainly there is crime that takes place throughout Trinidad and Tobago that aren't related to organized groups, but individuals who have basically taken advantage of Trinidadians. So when we are arresting other individuals for other offenses, they could be anything from house break and enters to thefts to sexual assaults. These are crimes that cause, again, great fear to everyone. And so they may not be gang-related, but they certainly are crime-related, and we will focus on that.
I don't know if you'll be the best person to answer. Last year, the legislation had been passed concerning wiretapping to ensure that there was no abuse of that system. Well, I guess warrants would have to be applied and so on. But as the constitutional rights, the majority have been suspended, has there been any wiretapping activity outside of this prescribed legal framework, given the fact that we are now in a state of emergency?
Not as far as I'm aware, but I believe the better person to answer that would be the Minister of National Security, to whom the authorized officers would ultimately report. You may recall the authorized officers being the Chief of Defense Staff, the Commissioner of Prisons, the Commissioner of Police, and the head of the SSE.
You could answer the question.
As far as I'm aware, all interceptions that have happened so far are within the law, and we have not gone out of the law to do any of those interceptions.
That is a confirmation that there has been wiretapping activity as part of intelligence gathering during the state of emergency.
There has always been.
This question is for either Mr. Maharaj or Mr. Sandy. In the last 24 hours, you've seen that some of the seizures, in one of the seizures made at Bessel Street, seen a number of army uniforms with bulletproof vests with regimental numbers on them. Intelligence sources are saying that, based on the information that they have, that soldiers might perhaps be renting these vests or selling uniforms to gang members and gang leaders in these areas. Can you all respond to that?
I will ask the Chief of Defense Staff to respond to that.
Thank you. Once we discover that there are these types of issues that arise when we do our operations, such as that one that you're describing, immediately the commanding officer, in this case the commanding officer of the Army, would have been given instructions, as he has been, to launch an immediate investigation into those articles of clothing that would have been discovered. What we do, as one would expect logically, is that we look at the numbers and identify where they came from. We verify that the clothing is actually authentic military clothing with our quartermaster. And that sets the stage for ongoing investigations to what this might be related to. as persons, and once persons are identified and the necessary conclusions from investigations are brought forward, then we pursue military action in accordance with our own justice system. Thank you.
Can you tell us, basically, a couple of days ago you said that you would look into the matter at Forest Park involving a gentleman that was allegedly beaten by soldiers. Anything new in that investigation?
Actually, if I should say if there's something new or not, yes, there was a report by the persons, the officers who were the commanding officer, the commanders on the ground who were responsible for that operation were required to submit reports. Those reports were submitted, and there was no such incident that took place on that operation in respect of the persons who made the complaint. Thank you.
This question is for Commissioner Gibbs or Mr. Sandy. Mr. Gibbs, if you can, Mr. Sandy can answer. Can you tell me, prior to the state of emergency, roughly in the last 6 months, what percentage of homemade guns did you all seize in Trinidad and Tobago?
I know that there was a number of weapons seized because there was a trust towards seizing weapons. But to identify the caliber or make of weapons, I'll ask the Commissioner to do that.
Yeah, your question, actually, I don't have those type of statistics with me today, so I wouldn't be in a position to even comment on that. Of course, we have had, I believe, upwards of 200 guns seized already prior to the state of emergency. And there's a variety of weapons, from some of the ones that you've seen here to handguns to homemade weapons. And again, all of them are just as deadly, just as lethal. They're the type of weapons we don't want on the street. So certainly, whether it was before the state of emergency or during the state of emergency, which now we can focus quite heavily on gun seizures, we want them off the street.
So there's definitely a percentage of that weapons seized prior to the state of emergency that were homemade shotguns. Is that correct?
No, you're putting words into my mouth. I'm saying that out of the weapons that we have seized, although I don't have the statistics here or the breakdown of what the weapons are, there is a portion that have been homemade or put together.
Okay, which brings me to my question, the direct question I wanted to ask prior to this, was a lead-up, is that we see these scrapyards being cleared, right? And I am sure some of those guns that you just told us that was seized, was there any indication to suggest that some of these homemade shotguns where iron was used from these scrapyards or the gathering of the iron from these scrapyards, perhaps used as part of the weapons? The weapons were made from iron in these scrapyards. That's the question I really want answered.
Well, one of the things that we know is that we gather intelligence from all different sources, and we look at any possibility of where weapons could be produced, where they could be shipped to Trinidad and Tobago, and our efforts are to eliminate those possibilities. So we use any kind of intelligence, evidence that we have to eradicate and to ensure that these weapons, if they're there, are taken off the streets. If it's involved with scrap iron yards, then yes, we will certainly take a look at it.
So you're saying that there is some kind of evidence to suggest that some of the homemade weapons being made, the iron is derived from these scrapyards?
Well, you're making a lot of suppositions here, and certainly when it comes to police operations, I'm not about to talk about our intelligence and what we do with that.
I'm just merely asking the question, sir.
Commissioner Gibbs, in one of these previous news briefings, the Attorney General said that he's passing a file to you in relation to a young lady that made some threats against the Prime Minister. Can you just give us an update in terms of the investigation one? And yesterday the Prime Minister said that she may not be pursuing the matter. Can you say that if the matter is still being pursued?
Well, I can tell you that, first of all, we look at the behaviors of people. We don't go after individuals per se. Again, it's the behaviors, what they do, that we look at. And in this particular case, it's been in the media quite extensively. I can tell you that we are, from a policing standpoint, looking at it. And as we get through all of our investigations on it, it'll be determined if any action will be taken.
If I could just interject to clarify one point on that issue. When that issue was raised, the young lady in question had on her Facebook that she was 25 years of age. And I think that in part is what accounts for the response internationally and locally, because as I'd indicated, a number of people in the diplomatic corps and embassies and so on looking on started saying, well, what are you all doing about this? Subsequently, it was through the media I learned of the fact that this person is in fact merely a teenager. And of course, the Prime Minister's response yesterday to that is one that will no doubt be taken into account. That said, of course, we have to respect the right of the police and the independence of the office of the DPP in these matters. But the Prime Minister has made known her views on the matter yesterday from a personal standpoint, and I simply wish to echo those sentiments.
All right. So, has the young lady surrendered to police? What is the situation in terms of that?
Well, again, we're looking into the matter, and certainly we're taking our time with that investigation to make sure that we do the right things for the individuals involved and for the nation in terms of security. And that's as far as I'll go.
Mr. Maharaj, you spoke earlier on about the weapons being unearthed. Can you just exactly tell us where these weapons were found in terms of where they were hidden? And are we seeing, maybe across the board, are we seeing more ingenious ways of criminals hiding or concealing weapons around the country?
Well, let me just answer specifically about that operation last night. The weapons were found in the Caroni South Bank Herrera Road. That's specifically where it was. And yes, it was found isolated in a bushy area. So no one was arrested, in fact, in that operation. In terms of the general concerns from where we sit, both police and army, we have to go by the intelligence. So wherever it points us, whether weapons are going to be in homes or whether they're going to be buried somewhere, we will pursue that in accordance with the intelligence that's provided. Thank you.
We're seeing here that guns are being seized, ammunition and so on. And as the police commissioner is saying, the objective is to get them off the streets. But I'm wondering in terms of them getting into Trinidad and Tobago in the first place, because they're here, they're being, as you're getting them in one sense, one may question the numbers, but there's been some success, as the government is saying. But there's the point of them coming into Trinidad and Tobago. Is that being addressed? Because then you may get some off, but others will come in. And a lot of people are still wondering how they're getting into the country in the first place.
Of course, that is being addressed, and our maritime operations, our maritime propositions and proposals are in effect addressing those areas as we speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank the Minister of National Security, the Commissioner of Police, the Attorney General, and the Chief of the Defense Force for being here this afternoon, and to thank you for participating in today's post-cabinet media conference on this update. Let me just take the opportunity on behalf of the Minister of National Security to again announce those two numbers, 800-0699 and 800-0700. Those are the two numbers to call, 800-0699 and 800-0700, and it's manned 24/7. And as you see, the information already beginning to emerge, and from callers is leading to hits like the one that you have discovered here today. We thank you again, and we ask you also to observe the curfew between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. in the designated areas of Trinidad and Tobago, but as far as possible, try to get in early and enjoy the company of your family and friends. Thank you very much, and may you have a pleasant afternoon.